Joe Mortgage.
And I'm Cup of Joe Mortgage.
This week, Joe, I am excited about it. I've been pumped about. It's been kind of a secret as far as our guest, which we're going to get to in a little bit. I want to hold off on that. I can't wait, especially for you fantasy football players. But before we get into that, last week, boy, we had some good news from the Fed Wednesday last week. Sounds like they're anticipating possibly making, I think they stated three
cuts over the next year. But with it being an election year, we never know when that's going to happen. So that's why today's show is going to be awesome too. We were talking last night, right? And just some of the things that the Fed are announcing have helped us lately too. So, one thing that I tell clients is, if you just bought a house a month ago and things like that, it might not be the right time just yet to look at refinancing, right? And so watching those rates, over the next year for people that have already bought and already in a house, that's a good thing for them. And it's really helped, I don't know about you, but it's helped some of my clients that, we were taking a chance on the market with that announcement coming out, and, we locked in, at a better price for them that are closing still this month. So it was a nice change last week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we saw a couple of weeks before the Fed made that announcement. I think we saw, you and I, a little bit of dip in the interest rates. But definitely from last Wednesday, we've definitely seen some good stuff. I mean, now finally the 10-year note is under 4%. I mean, it's been a long time since it's been below 4%. So
yeah, really, I flirted with that for a while, and then all of a sudden it shot up. But the rates. The nice thing is the cost to get those rates, right? Mm-hmm. Is what's helped us. I had a client. We actually saved them a point on a cost to get the same rate, which was really nice. They didn't want to change their payment. But just to drop the cost by, $3,500, because that 1 point was $3,500 for them.
Right.
They enjoyed that more than trying to change their payments another $30. So
yeah, absolutely. And do you think that over the next 6-12 months, those that have bought a house in the past 12 months, during the year of 2023, Joe, do you see perhaps people starting to maybe refi to get that lower rate that it may end up coming later this year?
I don't know if you've done it. I went back and, knowing what the branch has done and knowing what I've done, I've gone back, and it's probably the people that, bought a house in the early 2023, up to about June, mm-hmm. Their rates are still a little bit better than where the market's at today. So if you bought a house a year ago, it's probably not the right time yet to look at that, but probably this time next year, you might be looking at rate refinancing at that time, because you usually want to do it about a point less than what your interest rate's at now. Mm-hmm. And that really is what makes the difference. I mean, 0.5% off of your payment is great. But if we're seeing the market going in the trend, it might be smart to wait another month or 2 months or 3 months after that, 8-month mark, year mark after you bought the house to start looking at it, in my opinion. But if you need that extra savings right away, just know that, refinancing is great, because we can actually put the closing cost right into the loan as long as your house appraises for enough to do it.
Right. Absolutely.
So I would tell everybody, if you don't have a mortgage professional, reach out to Joe and I. Right. Let's talk about where you're at. Let's look at options and build out a plan more than anything, versus, sitting there waiting, thinking. But if you don't have somebody that's contacting you and you have a relationship with, then that's not the right loan originator for you anyways. So,
and everybody's situation is different too, right? It's got to be, I mean, like you said, as a norm, perhaps 1% lower interest rate, but sometimes it's 0.75%, or maybe it needs to be more. That just everybody's situation is different, right?
That's correct.
So working with a mortgage professional like you and I to be able to go through case by case and put the numbers together to see, does it make financial sense to make that move? So Good stuff.
Agree. So tell
For
us a little more about the guest. I'm more interested about, you had me on the hanger last week telling me we have a special guest and you wouldn't even tell me who it was. I mean, luckily I got to meet him, but tell us about our special guest because I'm
we
excited
do.
to hear his take on what's going on. And
We've got a
coming up in 2024.
great guest on our show today. I know last week I kept it a secret, didn't divulge our guest name because of how high profile of a guy he is, especially didn't want to overload the internet, with people finding out about this, and especially all you fantasy football players out there that love your fantasy football teams and that. Our guest today played on the Green Bay Packers, then transferred to the no, wait a minute, that's not right. He's an MVP agent at Remax and known for his client success on the field in bidding war situations. Please welcome everyone, Mr. Aaron Rodgers.
How's it going, guys?
Rodgers spelled the right way. Let's go with that one.
Rodgers
spelled the right way.
Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Good to have you on, finally. So how's that ankle or Achilles tendon?
We can throw the ball, you know? Yeah. Luckily, I just have to sit at the desk all the time, though. So, or in the car.
Right. Hey, Aaron, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you do, so that way they know a little bit more, and the area that you work in.
Yeah. So I'm primarily in the Woodlands and Spring areas in Texas, just north of Houston, and I focus a lot on residential real estate, and one of my specialties that I'm known for is navigating through bidding war type situations. And I got that specialty because I really got heavy I got super busy during, of course, just like a lot of people did, during the pandemic era and right after that. So, while a lot of people were having big struggles trying to even just get into a house, I knew I had to pivot and figure out a way to win these situations. Otherwise, one, I wasn't going to eat, but they also weren't going to be able to get into a house. And then, you're going to have super frustrated, buyers that are eventually just going to decide, you know what, I don't even want to buy. I just want to rent. And that's really a disservice to themselves. And, I needed to figure out a way to make it so that they could get in the game and be able to start gaining this appreciation and making some money and setting themselves up for a bigger future.
Yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, I can't imagine trying to show homes or even virtually try to show homes, right? Because people didn't want you coming in there, and then dealing with, the bidding wars that we went through and some of that too. So when did you start in the business, if you don't mind me asking that?
Yeah. So I got in the business in 2014 as far as, starting to kind of learn what was going on and everything. And then I had a mentor who he got his license right before I got mine. And it was kind of like that. If you've seen that movie, Wolf of Wall Street, we were sitting there and he was talking about, I should go ahead and finish my license and everything. And I wasn't quite sure about it. And, I didn't want to be in a salesy type thing. I didn't like that whole mantra. But then, he said that he made, 30 grand off of a deal. And I was like, 30 grand off of a deal? How do you do that? I said, there's no way you did that. I said, you show me a check right now for $30,000. I'll go finish my license. And he pulled the check out and showed it to me for $30,000. He had just sold $1 million house. And he had just got his license too. So, that immediately amped me up and made me want to go finish it. I did that, worked under him for a little bit. And then I realized that, I could do this, on my own. And so I went and took off with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, $30,000 checks are nice, but I don't think they come as often as people think they do.
We call those lottery tickets.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So, I work with a bunch of newer agents, and what is kind of that? What I'm finding, in that time frame that you have to put into it, it takes probably 3-4 years truly to start feeling like you're getting better at it and you're getting more clientele. Did you have that same thing, or was there something that you did different that you found the success right away?
It does take that long if you don't, approach it differently. And it took me about that long to get it figured out because I didn't have a coach. And that's the number one thing is an agent that's coached is set apart from, any other agent by far. There's like, I can't remember the number of agents out here in Houston. I mean, it's a bunch. And only about 5% of those, 5 to 10% of those ever actually make anything of it. And even of that 5 to 10%, a handful of them are actually wildly successful. And it's because no one gets coached, and it's super important to know how to navigate a transaction because it's so easy to lose, to lose a deal and have a disgruntled buyer or seller even because you didn't know what you were doing. So after I got coached, I mean, the whole thing changed. And within, I would say 6 months of starting coaching, it started really kind of clicking with me and going off. The main thing though is and this is with anything, I mean, even in y'all's industry, is you have to be a student of your craft and you have to go out there and learn as much as you can every single day, position yourself to be able to handle whatever situation could come up.
Yeah. Coaching is a big thing. It makes a difference for everybody. Kind of threw some things at you today, but one of the things that we're getting in with the Fed, like Joe and I were talking earlier, they're talking about possible rate cuts in 2024. Why to you is it more beneficial for people today to still be buying a house, or should they wait?
That's a really good question, Joe. In theory, waiting for the rates to drop is a good idea because you can get that better rate, and then you can even be able to afford more house because you got that better rate. The problem is that everyone's thinking the same exact way. So a house that should cost say $400,000, in today's market with no competition, if you wait until the rates drop, everybody's going to be excited that they can now afford that $400,000 house, and so they're all going to start putting in offers. And now you're going to have to pay more for that house just to even get into it. So that rate that you were waiting for is pretty much going to be negated. On top of, if you have to wait until the rates drop, and whenever that is, then the price of that house is going to appreciate it at some point through there. So you're not going to get the house at that price anymore anyway.
Right. No, that's a great point that you brought up. Buying a house now, even if you can afford that little bit higher of a rate, you'd have less competition. And, and sellers are willing to probably help out a little bit more on that negotiating to get them into that house to help with closing costs and things right now in the market today. But when rates drop, we never know. So that's a great one.
Right. Well, and just on that topic still, Aaron, 2 years ago when rates were lower, what was the housing market like as far as your clients putting offers in? I mean, what was that like for them?
Yeah, I mean, well, I was busier, that's for sure, and not necessarily with more clients. I was writing lots of offers, and because you had to, and offers were getting in big time bidding war situations, and you said, if you weren't, pretty much picking 3 or 4 houses that you absolutely fell in love with and wanted to live in, then you were behind the 8 ball, So it was a lot of just writing offers, and you even knew going into it, we would be looking at a price point of houses, and I would even be telling them before we even left the house, you like this house? Okay, well, be prepared to come up several $1,000s, and I've seen houses go for $200,000 above ask,
Wow. Yeah, I Joe, I think you can confirm this as well. I mean, I remember clients that were putting offers in 40, 50,000 above, the list price, and they were getting beat out. They were getting beat out.
I had a client we did is $80,000 over the appraised value. Not even just the list price. It was $80,000 over the appraised value, and that's a hard pill to swallow when you're putting out $80,000 hoping that house gets to that value. Luckily, it did. But that it was still a scary moment for my clients.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like people are trying to gauge the market in this, trying to be like Warren Buffett and find the bottom of it. I mean, and I know all three of us, we've all heard, I want to wait until the market hits the bottom so I don't have to overpay for a home. I mean, how ridiculous is that? I mean, it's like, to be able to try to gauge, you'd have to, Aaron, I bet you have the crystal ball, don't you? To be able to show You know, when, as a realtor, because you're a realtor, so you must have the crystal ball to be able to know when the bottom of that market is, right?
You know, if I did, I'd make a lot more money, and they'd also get me for insider trading.
It's almost
That's
like
awesome.
consumers today are treating home buying like buying stocks, you know. I mean, trying to find the bottom of the market, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you know, I hear buyers all the time saying, you know, the prices are they're dropping, so I'm just gonna wait till it hits the bottom. But where is the bottom? I mean, you know, no one knows. Like you say, we don't have a crystal ball, you know. So they think that the drop in price is because home values are decreasing, but really the values aren't decreasing, you know, because people have to sell their house, and so whenever they're putting it on the market and it's sitting, they're dropping the price not because the value's dropping, but because they need to sell. When someone lists their house, it's usually because you know they have a job transfer, they need to be around family, you know, something like that. So there's a time frame on that, and so they need to be somewhere at a certain time. So you know they're willing to take that cut in price just to get it gone, so they can move on with their next chapter of their life. So yeah, that's the main thing. You know, your value is never gonna just go down. You know, there's no more earth being made; it's only
Right,
going up.
right. And
That's
that's
true.
with them wanting to or needing to hurry up and sell. It's because there's not very many buyers out there, right?
Right.
But once we do see rates drop, which, you know, evidently from what the Fed said last week, that they're looking or projecting possibly in lowering rates 3 times next year, a quarter point each time. If rates do come down, then everybody's going to be in the game playing, right? Nobody's going to, and now you're going to have that bidding war like what you were talking about before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's almost like right now is the bottom. This is the cheapest that you're going to buy the house right now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because today's prices are definitely going to be cheaper than tomorrow's prices.
Yeah, and I think, people, I've been in this industry for a long time, been in it since 2001. So I went through the housing crash, back in 7 to 8. The difference then and now is back then we had so many surplus or so much surplus on the market from a seller standpoint. So buyers, when the crash happened, that's what decreased the value of homes more, but in those areas that were hot. And now we're dealing with it different, right? We have less homes on the market and more buyers that are still looking because of the inventory. And so, that's where going into next year, when when these possible rates are dropping and people are waiting until that time, what is some of the guidance that you have for the people that are, on that, fence line? Am I going to buy now? Am I going to wait? But if they're waiting, what is kind of your guidance? What are some things, helpful hints that you have for them to be able to be prepared for, that market at that time?
Yeah, there's a few really important things you can keep in mind. You know, and first and foremost, you know, when your lender gives you an approval, if you're in a really hot market or even in a competitive area, that's your a pre-approval price doesn't need to be the price that you search for. You know, search for something a little cheaper. That way, if you do get yourself into a multiple offer situation, which will likely happen when rates drop, then you'll be able to afford to come up on your price and potentially win that bidding war. But that's a really big one. And then other than that, one thing that I never see happen, is no one ever asks the seller what's most important to them other than money. Obviously, they want to make the most money. We know that part. But what else is important? Do they need a free lease back because they're trying to build a new house? Do they need a short option period? There's several things. They could need to close on a very specific day, and you need to be prepared to give that to them. And then also when you do submit an offer, don't be pushy with it. A lot of people like to put escalation clauses in and be like, I don't want to deal with a bidding war. So, this is my offer, take it or leave it now. And no seller wants to feel that pressure because they're already feeling enough pressure as it is, having to pack up and move and do all this stuff. So trying to force them to make a decision right now is more likely going to just tell them, you know what, never mind. I don't want to deal with that offer, and you're not even going to be in consideration at this point. So
Right.
those are 3 things I would definitely keep in mind.
So you brought up pre-approvals. When as an agent, I see different ways that people in lending do pre-approvals. What are you looking for when it comes to a pre-approval? If you're that listing agent, what are some of the things that you want to know about that pre-approval,
Good stuff.
to accept it?
Yeah, I want to see, of course, the dollar amount, and I know there's some strategies behind that. Sometimes somebody will be approved for say $1 million, and the house is, listed for 700, and they'll show their pre-approval for 700, to make it look like, oh, we're maxing out. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, showing that you have a little bit more wiggle room there is gonna allow the seller to go, okay, well, they could come up if they needed to. They look very qualified. They're overqualified. That's really good. So I would go with something, along those lines. I don't really too much care about what rate they have because that's changing. They're going to refinance that thing. They're going to live in.
We don't even put rate on the pre-approval letter anymore.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of did away with it. One thing, like for loan originators that listen to the show and things like that, one thing that I do, and I would like to know if this helps too, is I do two things. One, I do a video to the listing agent, like a Loom video talking about the pre-approval with the pre-approval letter on what I did to make sure they're truly pre-approved. Documentation that I've gone through, income that I've calculated, credit, and give that video to the listing agent. So that way, what I've gone through. But then on top of that, the next day I usually call. If it's, most offers I see from agents are going out at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Right. But I usually call the next morning just to make sure they got that video and see if they have any questions. Does that help from a listing agent standpoint if the lender is doing that for their buyer?
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that helps with is in this business, there's a lot of, people that they're slow to get back to you, or slow to introduce themselves, so putting your face out there and showing, hey, I'm in this too. Like, this is where we're at. I'm here to help, stuff like that. That really goes a long way. It shows that you're involved and it shows that you're present. That's a big deal.
Good. Joe, I know you do something similar to that. I mean, anything we can do, especially in those harder markets for our clients, is what we really strive for here at NXT. And I know Joe does something similar to talking to listing agents, but I also feel like sometimes listing agents would rather look at a video than us calling, multiple times to see if they're going to get an offer accepted.
Aaron, if you don't mind, we actually have a question coming in here, posted up on here as far as Chris asked, what advice suggestions would you give an agent that is having a hard time selling a home in this market?
Okay, that's a really good question, Chris. Strategy when selling a home is so important, and so and a lot of times it's not up to us as an agent to do this. All we can do is advise. But I always like to list a house low if they'll let me do it. And it does a few things. It puts the house in another category in the search parameters. And so, if your house is worth say 400,000, so we've been going with that number, I would like to list it somewhere around 375, maybe even 380. And what that does is when people are searching for those houses, I'll be the nicest house for $380,000 on that list. And that's going to drive a lot of attention. And so I'll take that, and that usually will get me some extra, leverage. And whenever you do that and you can get, an extra offer or two, then whenever people call and ask, because agents always call and ask, do you have any offers? When you can say I have 2 offers on hand, it makes that way more attractive.
Yep.
So that's something. And then of course your marketing is everything. Whenever you do this, do something like, of course your open houses, but post these things, put them out there in the world so everybody can see, hey, we have an open house, right here. And make sure you put out plenty of signs. A lot of agents put out, 5 signs because they don't want to run around all the different streets and stuff. And I get it. I hate doing it, especially in this Texas heat, but you still, if you can put out 25 signs, 30 signs, it's getting seen. And so it's all about, just being best known. There's a saying that Grant Cardone says, I'm a big fan of his. He says, best known beats best. In other words, if they see you, they're likely to come see the house. So that's what
You made a good point there about the signs, because we've done these weekend warriors going around and talking to a lot of agents that are doing open houses, and it's amazing how many you go to that only have the sign in the front yard, and you're driving around because you have the address going every which way in some of these neighborhoods, and they're not easy to find. And so the more signs, I like that advice. The more signs you can get people to go that route. And the arrows on signs really make a difference to me, because I'm old. My eyes see those big arrows. Yeah, right? Just make sure they're pointed the right way. That's correct.
That's right. That's right. No, that's good.
And Chris, thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Anyone else? I mean, if you do have questions, drop them down below there. Certainly, even though we're starting to run out a little bit of time, but Aaron, is there any last, if you have any last comments or anything that you would say for buyers in 2024, any advice that you would give them?
The biggest advice I could give anybody is don't wait until you see the rate that you want to buy the house, because that is not going to be the rate that you pay that house off in. Get in the game as soon as you can. Get in the game. Don't over leverage yourself, and just get in and play. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's great advice.
Good stuff. Great advice. Certainly is. Well, thank you, Aaron, a lot for coming on the show. I think this has been some great information for buyers out there today. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, Aaron, I know I'm going to put it up down below there, but as far as email address and Instagram, are those going to be the best for people to get a hold of you? Any questions or follow-ups for you?
Yeah, and you can also Google me, Aaron Rogers, the Woodlands Realtor, and you can find my Google business page there. All of my other social medias and everything are linked through there. My website is on there as well, and that links to everything. So you can get in touch with me a whole bunch of different ways that way, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has. I'm all about helping everybody, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to make it, and so this would be a good way for us to help each other.
Absolutely. I think some great advice for today for everyone as well. To not wait for the interest rates to come down. Get in now. So Good stuff. Well, next week, Joe and I are going to take this subject matter even further in depth by discussing the housing market for 2024. So tune in next week, where we'll be taking our questions and comments from all of you on what your take on the market is and how we can help you navigate it with the 2024 housing market. I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. Those of you that have, really appreciate, and the questions as well. If you have any further questions for Joe and I afterwards, or you want to get a hold of us, down at the bottom there, you can see our email address, the Mojo Show Podcast @gmail.com is a great way to get a hold of us for any further questions. Otherwise, we'll sign out for this week. I'm your host, Joe Mortgage, and that handsome guy over there with the beard is your co-host, Cup and Joe Mortgage, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.